Yeah, so I wanted to just offer a little kind of story, really, like a little story time, to tell you all a little bit about the project and how it kind of grew, how it came about. And, you know, I guess probably you all know what a mandala is, or, you know, one of these. Does anyone not know what a mandala is? You can let me know if you don't know. Okay, I think you all know. So the mandala, you know, it's one of these shapes, usually a circular shape, and in a lot of the traditions, the circle is held in a square. So you have like a square, which is like a structure, and then you have a circle, and then you have lots of things inside the circle. And so the square offers a kind of stability to the whole. And I'm telling you about this because, I'm talking about this because when the Mandala project kind of was born, if you like, the vision was very much of a mandala. And, you know, mandala is a space within this structure. So there's a structure, but there's also a space. And that space contains everything. It contains all the elements that make up the mandala, all the colors, all the shapes. It contains the structure, it contains a flow or a movement, it contains the breath. And in our case, it contained the community, and it contained all the elements that helped to create this whole of the mandala. And in that kind of whole, there was an idea or a feeling that everything is balanced and everything is in equality, and that within that, people can be, sometimes when it's appropriate, somebody takes the center, like right now I'm speaking, so you could say I'm like in the center of the circle, but I'm also in the peripheral, and that everybody in the whole mandala, so all of the students, the recipients, the teachers, the teaching community, the partner organizations, the vision really was that it was a mutual, equal network that just could flow, and people could come in when it was the right time and then go to the peripheral and hold it. So this was kind of like a vision that appeared very strongly of this kind of network. So you might like to just kind of hold that in your mind as I'm speaking, this idea of the mandala, and that you also are all part of that mandala, and that you know, right now your part is here in this circle. So this vision kind of arose in about 2014, and after our first visit to Amman. And that visit was, you know, stepping into the refugee community, working with Collateral Repair Project, which is a grassroots organization based in Amman. And it was really diving in deep. And we just kind of went and we offered classes and we offered yoga and we offered dance. But what happened was we really saw how people responded so positively. And at that time, in the refugee community that we were working with, yoga was very new. Most people hadn't done any yoga. People might have heard of it, but they hadn't practiced it, and it was still a kind of new thing for most people. So, but what we saw was that people responded really positively and really quickly. They noticed a difference in their well-being, in their day-to-day lives, in how they were dealing with things, how they were coping with things in those situations, because so 2014, 2015, when this all started, you know, the Syrian crisis was very acute, and there were a lot of refugees from Iraq. Everything was very uncertain, very raw, you know, very extreme, we might say. So people found that they could use these tools to manage their daily lives, and we were hearing really positive things back. So we saw that the possibilities were vast. And so we kind of like collaborated, like Rula came in, Claire came in, Susan came in, and we just collaborated, and we started to think about how can what's the best way we can show up, what's the best way we can offer what we do that will have the most far-reaching benefit. So we kind of thought about that, and we had a few stops and starts, and some ideas worked, some didn't really work. But we also saw that in Amman there was a really growing yoga community at that time. So we thought, well, it makes sense to work with local teachers and to invite teachers to come on board. But we really had a sense that people needed to understand a trauma-informed approach, that maybe there was certain elements that would be supportive for those teachers to learn for themselves, to empower them to go into communities and feel that they had the tools. So then what we decided is to offer trauma-informed yoga teacher trainings, let's say, like this one, but in person. And it was amazing, and people kind of just magically showed up, and it all felt like held with a sense of flow. And you know the way when things just magically sort of drop into place, it was very like that. And there was a lot of hard work also, but even the hard work kind of just had its own magic and momentum. So there was a sense of flow in the whole process. And what we did was we offered those trainings in exchange for the participants to offer seva, to offer service in their communities or in the collateral repair project in Amman, which supports refugees, urban refugees there. And so that was kind of the beginning of the Mandala, and the vision was that could also go anywhere, because with each teacher that became empowered, they could take those tools into their community. And we don't even know half of where it all went, because so many people have done the trainings and then gone back into their communities and offered yoga in different settings and in different ways. And gradually we kind of offered some outreach programs. We worked with the Norwegian Refugee Council, and we did some programs in Zaatari and Azraq refugee camps. Samira was a big part of that, and Rula coordinated that. And we did a bit of work for teachers and recipients in the refugee community in Palestine also. So just to also say that none of us, maybe apart from Susan, who has a background in trauma TRE, which you'll be doing a little bit of experiential practice about that, none of us are trauma experts. We were yoga teachers, we were yoga therapists, and we were really coming from our own lived experience working with refugees and working with ourselves also, and working in different diverse communities and bringing just our own lived experiences. But we saw how yoga had such a positive application and effect on people who had been through traumatic experience and who may or may not have been suffering from PTSD. Or had symptoms related to their conditions that they were living in as a result of being in exile. So it was a very kind of all-round benefit, let's say. So yeah, and so we kind of carried on a bit like that, and then around 2018, 2019, the directors all of the directors kind of got a little bit like needing a break and needing to focus on other work. And so we kind of let it go to sleep for a little while. And then Molly and Kyle stepped in and have kind of taken it on, and which is fantastic. And so really the mandala is still there, and it's always been there, and it's now being given a new kind of breath with this training and with Molly's input, and Lily and Shireen, who created a lot of the put together a lot of the training materials for us in the manual, and a whole new volunteer team. So we're super happy about that, and I'm sure I've left some bits out of the story, but that's a kind of overview of the Yoga Mandala project. And as you can see, Molly's just put up the vision statement and the aims and objectives. So I'm just going to kind of read through those, so you can either read it off the screen or you can just listen. So our mission and vision. The Yoga Mandala project is a charity project supporting the well-being of refugees, survivors of trauma, and service providers through sustainable yoga programs, trauma-informed training, and crisis relief and response projects. We build resilience through self and collective care while fostering a sense of community among trauma-informed teachers. We envision a world where everyone is given access to the healing tools of yoga, as well as other stress-relieving self-regulation practices. Our team members participate in culturally relevant, trauma-informed training prior to working directly with marginalized communities. We empower refugees and those supporting them with self-care and self-regulation tools. The global mandala of trauma-informed teachers grows through an active community of practice. We put compassion into action in times of crisis by advocating, fundraising, and serving. We uphold dignified programming by being community-centered and always prioritizing the needs and voices of those we serve. And our aims and objectives are to provide psychosocial support and wellness for those displaced by war and conflict, to provide quality yoga training for teachers and others who wish to offer their services within the sector, to provide training in culturally appropriate practice that serves the needs of the communities that we work with, to provide training and support in self-care and wellness for volunteers, to create sustainable volunteer programs in partnership with local organizations, to establish ongoing mentoring and community support to volunteers, and to provide easily modifiable yoga practice protocols that may be integrated into the programs of local community and non-governmental organizations. So that's a kind of overview of the Mandala project. And I think Molly's going to take us into a little update of where things are up to now and where we're going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Saraswati. And saw Susan just joined in, so we might